Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges Sledges Cricket Podcast. I'm your host, Ashwin. I'm joined by DJ. DJ, let me start by celebrating with you or wishing you a very, very happy 5th anniversary for the Edges Sledges Cricket Podcast. Can you believe it has been 5 years since we've been doing this show?
Wow. 2018 to 2023. Congrats, man. Congrats to you and Varun and
I'm,
Absentia as well.
I'm pretty
Pretty
sure our first
emotional.
episode was March 4th. Yeah, it is pretty emotional.
Yeah.
So, March 4th of 2018. Hey, if any of you listening have been on the journey with us all 5 years, we especially appreciate it. And if any of you haven't, that's fine. Hopefully, we'll have many, many more years to come. So, exciting times. Always fun to
Yeah.
celebrate.
It's awesome that we've gone from a video show to a purely audio show and now in a video and audio show.
Now we just
So
do it
that's
all.
pretty cool.
It's been fun. It's been quite the journey, right? We've had a chance to travel over the years and all be together, recording live together at some point. Two of us together at some points. And then, of course, at some points we've been through the all things in the pandemic. We got some of the great cricketers to come talk. I mean, this morning I was watching the WPL game, and it was shocking to me that we had Jemmy on the show, and it was just amazing. It's been great.
And Shikha, who opened the bowling for the Delhi Capitals as
And
well,
Shikha.
was
So
on the show
we're
as
not.
well.
Well, it's been great. It's been an exciting journey, and again, thank you to all our listeners for sticking to us through all of it. We're going to talk a little bit about everything happening in the world of cricket. We took last week off because I don't think we could bear to deal with kind of another week to talk about all things going on in Test cricket. So we took a week off. But DJ, today we're going to talk about the India-Australia third Test, and mostly talk India-Australia men's cricket. But in the second half, we'll talk a little bit about the WPL as we preview the fourth Test coming up. So. Yeah. It's a little bit easier actually with a few days after the loss. Like the 3-day test makes it easier to cover the losing test, right? I would have been a very different kind of emotional if we had to cover this right after the loss happened.
Yeah, and it's been a not a great few weeks for Indian cricket, right? I mean, we didn't cover the Indian women crashing out of the T20 World Cup as well. The controversial comments by Elisa Healy about Harmanpreet, who played a valiant knock, was run out in controversial circumstances. And that was then quickly followed by this loss to Australia. And I have to say, after the Delhi Test match, it was a bit of a break. It was a bit of a lull. And I think there was emotionally, we felt that this hadn't quite lived up to the billing that had been given, the Border Gavaskar Trophy, the Clash of the Titans, and all of that stuff. But now, when you look back, and this is what I was thinking yesterday, actually, we've lost this test match in Indore, and of course, the dramatic circumstances why it was in Indore, not Dharamshala. And we could have quite easily lost the Delhi Test match, bar heroics from Akshar and Ashwin and a collapse. So we could actually have been sitting here talking about a 2-1 deficit. Luckily, we're talking about a 2-1 lead. I don't know. Maybe that puts this week in context a little bit.
Yeah, right? I think that's what's crazy about it. After it was 2-0, all the comments were like, India's invincible at home and hard to. But if you now that we've had the loss, if you really try to peel back, it was not, those two tests were not really great test wins. It was overly reliant on the lower order. At one point, I think I tweeted out, it feels like Australia versus Ash, Jaddu, and Akshar. Like that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like anybody else was stepping up. Yes, Rohit had one good knock. Pujara ended up having one good knock, but really nobody else has truly stepped up. But we'll talk about
who's truly stepped up is you. You're the only one left with a chance of your prediction coming right.
What was
Varun
my
and
prediction?
I both went for 4-0.
I was
You
3-1
went with
or
3-1.
2-1.
I think you went with 3-1 or 3-0. I can't remember now.
Anyway, at least it's closer than 4-0. But all right, let's talk about that test, right? And again, if you're still listening in the second half, we'll talk a little about the Women's World Cup and then the WPL. But India versus Australia, going into Indore, two changes, right? One forced, one not. So let's talk about the forced change first. Mohammad Shami is out and with injury, and Umesh Yadav walks back. Now you can sit here and say Umesh Yadav at home, or Umesh Yadav's record in India would have him walk into any side. I mean, I thought it was amazing to see some of the clips later where he's like, listen, whether or not you make the 11 is part of Test cricket, right? But he gives it 100% every time he goes out, and he had an unbelievable match. So thoughts on Umesh? I'm a big fan of Umesh, the Test bowler, so it's hard for me to be unbiased with reacting to his return. But how did you feel about that?
Yeah, it was good. I was pleased to find out his nickname, and this is the important stuff that we cover on Edges Sledges. He's called Strongy, apparently. I can see why he's called that. Yeah, he had a great spell actually to keep India in the game on day two. And as you say, if you look back over time, right, he also played that Bangalore Test match. There were a few parallels between this Test match and that Bangalore Test match. India didn't score too many. India bowled well in the second innings, and Umesh was part of that effort. Of course, Ishant was there as well. And over the years, Umesh has been a great servant of Indian cricket over at home, particularly. He was part of the Australia, the magnificent win that in that series as well. Of course, Umesh was part of that lineup. Um, Pleased to see him doing well. But the reality is that he's kind of third choice behind a Bumrah who's still injured and maybe out for the World Test Championship final. He's definitely out for the IPL, I think is what reports say, and behind Shami as well. I mean, uh, so it's lucky that India have that embarrassment of riches in having Umesh as a third choice seamer. In the times past, he would have been worth his weight in gold, right? When he had
But I
the
mean,
likes of
he's
Venki and Srinath toiling
yeah, but
away on.
he's also been behind Siraj, right? So he's actually been fourth if you think about that, because
Yeah,
they went Shami and
yeah,
Siraj. So anyway, I'm happy to see him back, and of course in the wickets right away, right in the first innings, were the only time we really got wickets. He picked up three of them, and then the second change was the more debated, the more controversial, the more heated kind of one, right? Our man KL Rahul, who got a lot of heat in the last little bit, which is again something for us to talk about. Fine, what was replaced by Shubman Gill. Now you can look at it and say Gill made only 26 runs in the first opportunity. He got 21 in the first innings, 5 in the second. Or you can look at it and say in the first innings, he was the second highest run scorer by 1 run, which is shocking. But anyway, and his first outing out where everybody basically underperformed with the bat. So do you give him one more test? How did you feel about the decision? And do you give do you keep Gill in for the fourth test?
yeah. I mean, you've kept the other guy in for I don't know what 40 Test matches. It's probably fair to give Gill. He played a horrific shot in that second innings, I have to say. But man, in that first innings, just as India had won the toss and got in, there were a few cover drives, and they just like they. He just looks like $1 million. He looks like a good cricketer. And, it was a horrific shot in the second innings, which let the Australians back in after they played quite nicely. Um, yeah, he plays for me in Ahmedabad. There's no choice. Now you've gone down the route of having dropped your vice captain KL Rahul, uh, and you have played Shubman Gill. Now give him a proper run in the Test side as well as the ODI side, and maybe even the T20 side. By the sound of it, that he might be in that as well. So yeah, they're looking at him as one for the future, and so invest in that and invest properly. But interesting signs that the vice captain's out again, right? I mean, it just goes to the whole point. Like, no one really cares about vice captains.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I agree with you. And I think pretty clearly nobody cares about vice captains, and nobody really should. Let's talk about that first innings then, right? You never want to really talk about you never really want to talk about 109 all out. I don't even remember what it was. It was 109,
109 all out, yeah.
right, in the first innings. But what I want to specifically ask about is this the pitch and the strategy. Again, we tend to talk a lot about pitches regardless of where we go. But first morning of a test match, India chooses to bat. And in the sixth over, there's spin. So you have Stark and Cameron Green opening the bowling. So at least with the return of Cameron Green, they had a second quick bowler available. But in the sixth over, Matt Kuhneman comes on and Rohit Sharma gets stumped. Now, that's a whole different discussion on, oh my gosh, how do you get stumped in the freaking first morning of a test match? If Varun wasn't watching it, he wasn't able to, but he texted me saying, like in all caps with big question marks, saying, did our captain just get stumped on the sixth over, the first morning of a test match? But so let's start with spin in the sixth over and the fact that the pitch ended up being rated poor. Now, I think you and I are on slightly different pages here. What is your thinking here? Was it just bad cricket or was it a poor surface? I'll tell you, for me, it was both from the Indians. So where are you at? What's your thought?
This is a great one. So let's address the Rohit point first, right? Before Rohit played that shot, he tried to sweep, and the ball had taken off and hit Alex Carey in the helmet.
Yeah.
And
And
there's a
that's when
lot
a
of
big
chatter.
puff of dust kind of
Yeah.
on the first morning.
Yeah, in the first
tells you.
morning. Rohit was talking about how he talked about Iyer's innings after the game. He's like how we want to transfer pressure, do something different, not let them bowl in the same place. This is clearly part of that same strategy. So he jumped out. He's a really good player of spin. He uses his feet very well. He was beaten by the turn and carried it the rest, right? Happens to the best, literally. And Rohit is one of the best against spin. The pitches, okay, maybe we're bringing the whole pitch debate forward, but it was rated poor. But this is going to happen. If you lay out pitches like this, if you live by the sword, you've got to be prepared to die by it. And I, for one, have no sympathy. And I think it sounded in the press conference after the game that Rohit Sharma also said, we talk too much about pitches. We should talk about skills. Yes, it's almost impossible to execute your skills on that type of pitch. And I think that's the recognition of your second point, where it was a lack of execution of skills. But if you refuse, firstly, I don't know why the BCCI gives this game to Indore. I find the whatever politicking goes on with the BCCI behind the scenes, sending stuff to. I mean, Ahmedabad gets a test every time. We clearly know why that happens. Of course, whoever's running the BCCI at the moment makes sure that happens. When Dada was in Eden, would get a test match. Indore is not an obvious candidate to hold a test match. I think they've only ever had 3 test matches. They were given 2 weeks notice to prepare a pitch. They were probably given instructions to make it spin. This is the result of that. And the answer to that surely should be your test matches should be played in your biggest grounds, where you have the biggest chances of getting crowds in. You have the biggest chances of preparing good test match wickets. Chennai, why hasn't Chennai got a test? Some of the greatest test matches in Indian cricket history have been played out in Chennai. I'm thinking of Pakistan '96. I'm thinking of the chase against England. I mean, those guys know how to make a decent cricket pitch. I'm thinking of the last 2 cricket pitches that we made there, where Ashwin scored 100 and it went to 4 days. So I think there's a politics aspect to all of this. That aside, maybe the pitch was poor, but the Indian management and the Indian team have brought this on themselves. They've got world-class batters sitting in the lineup, but you're not giving them a chance to score runs, and this will happen. We've talked so many times about that Pune Test match, the Steve O'Keefe Test match, where he took 8 wickets, 9 wickets, whatever. This was good. This is a banana peel, right? If you keep trying to spin the opposition out, there will come a time where they say, okay, maybe we can do the same to these guys. That's what happened. Kunaman picked up 5 and Lyon bowled brilliantly in the second innings. And that's it. This is going to happen. I have very little sympathy for this situation. What they should have done is roll out a good test match wicket, because you're 2-0 ahead. You need to win 1 test match out of the next 2 to ensure your berth in the World Test Championship final. Australia are on the mat. You've let them in by doing this.
Yeah.
So it's a foolhardy situation. It's not. We should have laid out one of those tracks that Pakistan laid out, 700 plays 500, and then banked on Ashwin, Akshar, and Jadeja, that was sitting in the Aussie minds to just collapse them. But it won't give us a shot. Why do we do it to ourselves? We've done it to ourselves. Literally shot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. I think a couple of things I'll say. One, I think it's easier said than done in hindsight, right? Like in the first 2 matches, although we didn't necessarily perform great, they were not quite as bad. I fully agree. They weren't as bad or as rank turners, if you will. But we managed to pull through, right? Our batters played better than theirs did. Now, where we got complacent is we just assumed the Aussies wouldn't be able to change their game, and they didn't. They did. They stopped sweeping. They played much straighter bats. They played much more controlled. And then in the second innings, you saw as soon as they got their iron, they ran away with it. We just assumed we can keep pushing our luck with the rank turners and hoping it would work out.
Yeah, so and why bother? We've got a really good question actually from Randomly Systematic. Isn't it disrespectful to Ashwin and Jadeja to make tracks like this? They're extremely good bowlers, and just a little assistance to spin will make them lethal. It's exactly that. Back your players with the skill. You've done in the old days. This series would have played out like you win the test match in Nagpur, and then you just have batting tracks for the rest of the series.
Yeah, just flat.
Sachin, Dravid, Ganguly, Lakshman score 100 after 100 after 100, and you bat the opposition out of every game.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree, right? I think it's, again, easier said than done. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of pitch shows up in Ahmedabad. But, Rohit also probably got a little complacent by talking about, hey, we will be prepping for the Lord's World Test Championship final in Ahmedabad if again he got ahead of himself, right? And that's just the
Yeah.
reality of what
Yeah, I mean, he
Australia's ball
caveated
is.
it saying, if we win here, then we'll lay out a green track in Ahmedabad or whatever. But there's a thin line between arrogance and overconfidence, right? It was almost a given that they would beat Australia in this
Mhm.
game, and I don't know. I mean, now, so like the last time where the World Test Championship final spot went down to the last Test match that we played against England in Ahmedabad, we are back in the exact same scenario. I feel like I'm sitting in 2021. This is where we also miss Rishabh Pant.
Yeah,
We can't
I was going
forget
to
that,
ask you
right?
about that. Yeah.
Pant scored that 100 in that last test and brought us back into the game.
I mean, basically in the situations that we've been, actually all three tests, but Akshar showed up and bailed us out a couple of times in the first two. We've definitely missed a Rishabh Pant type player, reliable, gets the job done, and manages he seems to just walk in situations with the top order and even middle order couldn't get it done, and he just does.
I mean,
So
Lion, he would have just tried to take Lion apart, right?
yeah,
And it's a small ground, he probably would have succeeded in
yeah,
Indore. So I
yep.
don't know.
All right, let's
Maybe the
quickly
Rishabh
talk.
Pant show is just missing our boy too much.
I think we are. Let's talk quickly about the rest of the first innings, right? So Shubman and then Virat were the only ones who actually looked good, right? I think Virat ended up getting out to a great delivery, like LBW to a great delivery. But yeah, I mean, nobody else really looked good, right? Anything else to write home about? Umesh actually with those couple sixes, that was a fun moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
No, pretty appalling. I mean, I woke up when I was 88 for 7. And I was like, okay, now our best batters are in. And before I could even get out of bed, it was 8 down with Ashwin out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So then going into the second
No,
innings,
sorry,
then
one
yeah,
thing, one thing.
yeah,
Why is Akshar batting at number 9? Your top
yeah.
scorer for the series. Are we missing a trick there?
It is absolutely ridiculous. I think, yeah,
Bharat swaps with Bharat, right? Or Bharat comes down to 9 and like you push everybody else one up.
I mean, he batted nine in the second innings. I would have swapped him. I would have swapped him with Bharat. I would have sent him maybe even instead of Jadeja, right? Jadeja has batted at 5. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be a little fluid with your guys who are in form, especially when in this case we had to get 100 and we had to get 200, 250 ish to have an even shot in the game, and you perished at 50 for 3. I would have said, excuse me, Akshar in there, give your best batter the most time. Give them the most
Yeah.
balls. That's the number one rule of cricket, right? Give your best players the most time out in the field.
Pretty poor.
Let's talk about Australia's response, right? You've
Mm.
dismissed the home team for 109. You've struggled a little bit with the bat earlier in the tour. The last time you came out, you just swept your way into oblivion and just were not able to survive. Travis Head perishes pretty early. You're sitting there saying, gosh, we had no real runs on the board and we managed to get him out. But then Usman Khwaja and Marnus Labuschagne just built a partnership, something the Indians just didn't do. Ended up, at 100 odd for 1 before then they had a little bit of a collapse and perished for 197. But I mean, I've said this since day one. I said this to Jared on the show before Head was even playing, but I said for me, Head, Khwaja, Labuschagne, and Smith are maybe some of the strongest top 4 in the world, and they showed that. They showed that this test, didn't they?
I mean, Labuschagne, he's a lucky man, dude. He was bowled off a no ball by Jadeja, and I mean, Jadeja's taken 3 wickets of no balls in this series. He's got Smith, I think, twice, and he's got Labuschagne once, and
Once,
you
yeah.
can't be doing that. And that I think, if maybe there was a glimmer, if we'd got Labuschagne out, then Khwaja was looking serene. That 40, how many you get? 40 odd? I think that
Uh,
was worth its
60.
weight
He
in
made
gold. Oh
60.
wow, he made 60. It's worth its weight in gold. I mean, he would have. That was worth 100 on any other track. Yeah, Jitin Chandrana has said Jadeja has been bowling too many no balls for someone who comes off a few paces. Had Smith out of a no ball and Labu this game. This time is very costly. It was, and in the context of the game, we were sloppy, right? In that first day, you've been bowled out for 109. You've then given the opposition this let off. You've dropped catches. You burnt 2 DRS reviews horrifically,
Yeah, I was
horribly.
going to say we burnt all 3 basically
Yeah, and then when
early.
you get one,
Yeah.
which is plum and it's not given, you then don't review it because you're worried about losing your reviews. And a word about the umpiring as well. I mean, that was a bad game for. Okay, yeah. Again, we've got another comment about the umpiring, Menon and John Wilson. it was that the ball was turning, right? Yeah, fine. But there were so many decisions that were overturned. Who was it was Richard Kettleborough, right? It felt like he was. I think somebody said that. I was listening to a podcast recently. Maybe it was the final word. Somebody said that Richard Kettleborough was on commentary more than the commentators themselves.
Yeah, you literally get the third umpire job. You're like, I'm gonna chill a little bit, watch for some no balls here or there, and then I'm done. I'm obviously being facetious. Sure, the third umpires aren't chilling, but you expected a more relaxing time, and boom, he just got pulled into the action.
Yeah, and the Aussies kept pulling him in as well by
Yeah,
taking the bails off when there was clearly no edge. This is
yeah,
all like,
yeah. Let me quickly ask you about that. We have to go to break, but let me quickly ask you about that one. Right? Should there, and if you haven't heard about the controversies that have happened, it seems like it's happening a lot now. But if you're out of DRS reviews or don't want to really review it, you just whip the bails off and go to the third umpire. And for some reason, when the third umpire is checking for a stumping, he also checks for did it clip the pad. If he did, then they check the Hawkeye or whatever for the LBW, or then he can potentially even use Ultra Edge to check for the snake. So they're basically, and I think we were guilty of it too at times. I don't think it's super one-sided, but just constantly whipping the bails off, trying to get the umpire to
free
review it for
reviews,
free.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's within the rules. It's gamesmanship. I have no issue with it. It's just a bit silly because after a point, like there were times where Pujara, his back foot hasn't gone anywhere, and Carey takes the bails off it. It's fine. I'm actually okay with that. Like it's as long as it's within the rules, and it's and
Yeah,
there's no
actually,
clampdown on it. I'm
I
okay with that.
agree. I agree with that, but we're getting a comment in from Nikhil, which is what I agree with too. Is why are they even checking? Like, if you are only reviewing for the stumping, they should just not check for the.
So I'll tell you why they do that is because if there is actually a snick that the uh, standing umpire is missed, you have to then check all modes of dismissal, basically.
But why? That's what I'm saying. I think that's a rule issue, right? If you are appealing for a snake that the if you're appealing
No,
for a snake,
but it's just an appeal for a wicket, right?
yeah. So
And if
so
you granted that, so it's like if you bowl and you think it's bat pad, but it's not hit the bat, but it's just hit the pad, then you will check for LBW.
So I agree with that, but that's a team appealing to overturn either an LBW or catch. I feel like given, and I think it's currently a smart use of the rules, but in this case, if you're appealing for stumping and you're not using up your DRS, that's a very important distinction.
Yeah.
Then
It's interesting because actually the leg umpire is the one that's sending it upstairs.
yeah,
Right, because they're the one that's sending it upstairs.
which means you're not sending it upstairs to check for an edge or an LBW.
Correct.
You're
Correct. Maybe it's a
exclusively
communication thing.
Yeah,
But
you're
they found the
exclusively
loophole, and it's. I'm fine with that.
Credit to them.
I'm
You
totally
must
with
be a lawyer,
Chetri.
right? Yeah, you must be
I'm
a
totally
lawyer.
with Chetri putting the ball into the goal against
That
the
was pretty
Kerala
genius
Blasters.
too, actually. Yeah.
I mean, if you watched any football in your life, these goals happen all the time.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
I know.
sure. But anyway, sorry to the Kerala Blaster fans because your team walked off.
Anyway, all right, we're a cricket show. We're going to come back and talk the cricket. Let us take a quick break, DJ. We'll be right back and talk more about the test match. Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Lots to cover, and it's been. I thought I wouldn't get emotional reliving the crushing loss, but unfortunately, I am. So, in response to India's 109, Australia come out and put 197. It is worth saying at one point they were 186 for 4. Right, and then lost the last 11 runs for just 6 wickets. Outstanding by Umesh to help clean up the tail. That's historically been an outage area for Team India, is our inability to clean up the tail, and well partnered by Ashwin, who got something.
Is your dog under your desk?
My dog is under the desk. If you can hear the background noise, that's what it is. He keeps dropping his bone, and I have to keep throwing it to him. So that's what that was. Apologies for the interruption. But so pretty good response, right? 186. They've got you're sitting there saying they've got 80 odd runs lead with only 4 downs, and India could have panicked and ended up getting 6 for 11 to close it out. But then 100, so at that point, let me do the quick math. It was 88 runs.
Yeah, 88
was the lead they had. India had to come in and erase that. And Shubman goes pretty quick, to your point, bad shot. Rohit goes shortly after. 54 for 3, 78 for 4, and just kind of consistently falling short, right? What is your thoughts on the second innings, and then specifically talking about Pujara? I will say I was the most critical about Pujara's playing of spin. He got out to a horrendous back foot shot of Lion early innings, in the first inning. He looked extremely uncomfortable to spin in the first two test matches. He just did. He didn't look like he was going to be able to do anything. I've literally written messages saying it's time for Pujara to play the role Rahane did late in his career, which is just play overseas. He's an outstanding player in Test cricket overseas, but we have better Indian batsmen waiting in the ranks to play at home. And then he comes out and produces this knock that arguably got us to a third day. We were joking about a 1 or 2 day test match at this point.
Yeah, I mean, let's just go through the dismissals, right? So, of course, there was Gill, horrible shot. Rohit, done by Lion, similar to the Delhi dismissal in a way. And then in walks Kohli, and I mean, this is not a pitch that you can really play horizontal bat shots on. We should have learned that from the first innings.
And from the last match against the Aussies, that's what they did, right? That's how we won the.
And he smokes one to the cover boundary, and the next ball he tries to pull one after having tried to pull one the previous over and missed, and all smiled, and he's just like, dude, what? Why? But maybe he just got greedy and whatever. And so once he was gone, Iyer comes in, and that I think Jadeja was promoted in this innings, or was he promoted in the previous innings?
He was promoted in this one, right? He batted 5.
Yeah, he gets LBW, and that's 78 for 4. And then comes
I guess he batted
partnership.
5 in both innings, so never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and then comes a partnership which I felt gave India that little bit of semblance of hope. Now, when you think back to Bangalore, when you think back, so those are the reference points I have in my head, like Bangalore in the last tour, 2017, the Wankhede Test match against Australia when Lakshman and Sachin have a counter-attacking partnership, which then results in a chase of 120 where the Australians are bowled out for 93. Again, Bangalore, I think, was a chase of around 120. Australia again got bowled out for less, but it required a partnership between Pujara and Rahane the last time. I think Pujara got 92, Rahane got 50 odd. And so when Shreyas and Pujara were batting, that's what it felt like. Like there was that momentum shift that India, we were about 30 runs ahead with just 4 wickets down. And we were like, okay, if you can stretch this partnership, Iyer bats another 10 overs.
Mm-hmm.
He was hitting sixes. He was batting well. The pressure was transferring. And you could see the Aussies going like, oh my God, are they going to do this to us again? They've come back from the dead in Delhi. We should be winning this test match, but they're pulling away. And that is where Ashwin, Steve Smith, and his captaincy makes the difference.
Yeah.
Right? He hasn't been captain since Sandpaper Gate 2018. He was captain the last time he was here. He's captain in these conditions before. He figures out in his big cricketing brain that these guys are playing the spin. Okay, yes, it's spinning big, but they've worked out the conditions for that period. And if this continues for another 20 minutes, the game is going to slip away from them. So what does he do? He brings back Mitchell Starc.
Yeah.
And Iyer, footwork is different to spinners and to quicks. And Starc pitches one up, Iyer creams it, and Khwaja pulls out an absolute
blinder
stunner.
Yeah.
And that moment changes the game. Followed by another absolute blinder by the man himself. And Pujara hits a 6. Pujara's trying to transfer pressure after the wicket's fallen. And then he flicks one, and I think that catch from Steve Smith he's dropped a few in this series. But
I mean, that catch changed the innings, right? That was it. That was it for India. It was
those 2 catches, right? And that was it. I mean, once you had that, and with Akshar coming in at 9 without any opportunity to do anything, and of course Siraj, honestly, like, I don't know what he did in those 2 innings. In one innings he was run out, in the other he was trying to hoik. Well, Akshar was fine. He just hit his 6.
Yeah.
Just stay with him. I don't know whether we play another seamer. I don't think we need more than one seamer in these conditions.
And so we're gonna talk about the next test quickly, but let's finally talk about the chase, about Australia chasing it down.
Yeah, it was only 75, right? That we
75. I think with psychologically with 120, 125 even on this wicket, we would have had a much bigger shot.
Yeah.
At 75, so the Aussies are thinking, just don't do anything absolutely dumb.
And that's it, right? Like, you get a wicket, 0 for 1, second ball, I think you get a wicket. And then there's like 13 overs where they score 10 runs or
Yep.
something
They
crazy
just
like
dug
that.
their heels in. Yeah.
And then if you've got 120 to get, at that point you're 10 for 1 and you're like, we've gone nowhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so
75 just isn't intimidating enough. It just
no,
wasn't enough runs.
it wasn't. But I mean, I guess we were hoping that there'd be another 6 for 11, 8 for 28 type of collapse, right? But it didn't
Yeah.
come.
I mean, yeah, it just didn't. And kudos to, are you laughing at the dog still? Kudos to Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne, right? Like they showed up. Travis Head especially, by the way, lefty, perished early in the first innings. Didn't get to play early on in this test series, and has just shown why he is a top. I don't know what he is right now, but a top 5 ranked batter in the world
Yeah.
right now. It's
Yeah.
absolutely exceptional. Disappointing for us, obviously, 2-1, but adds a little bit of life into this series. So DJ, let's quickly talk about where we go from here before we pivot and talk about the women's game. Where
Can
do we
I
go
just
from
say,
here?
by the way,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
very impressed by your multitasking skills.
Dude, I
So
have to do
anyone
this
who's
every time
listening
I
to
work
this,
from home. I'm in the middle of a big meeting or something, and the dog just comes and starts throwing his
so
ball
this is
or
a
something. So, yeah,
corporate tips with
corporate
Ashwin
tips.
Garg
We don't have Varun right now,
multitasking episode.
but yeah, exactly. Of course,
This is genius. If you're not watching this on YouTube, please go and watch this on YouTube.
if you have
Because
a dog, you probably realize they sleep the whole day when you're doing nothing, and when you start talking to somebody or start doing something, then he's like, "Hey, I'd like to play now, please. Thank you very much." So, anyway, but thank you. I appreciate the kudos. Doing the best we can for our audio listeners, so they're not too distracted by it. Right? At
Yeah.
least the video guys can see it. Talk to me about Ahmedabad, DJ. We start the test in 3 days after the time of recording this. What do we do in selection here? So you started mentioning it, right? Two quicks have played all series. It was Shami and Siraj, and then Umesh and Siraj. What do you do here? Do you bring in a fourth spinner? Do you just bring in an extra batter, honestly, and like trust the 3 spinners and give the ball to Iyer if you need to at some point or something? Like what do you do if you're the captain?
So the question is, who's your batting option? Is it Sky?
Mm-hmm. It's Sky.
Right?
It's maybe Gill. It's maybe KL, and you push Gill down the order.
No,
Right?
I
There's been
think
some discussion.
I don't think KL comes back, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I think Gill continues at the top of the order. I think if you're going to dish out another spinning track, and honestly, this green pitch stuff, it's not going to happen. It's going to be another
Yeah.
spinning track, and
At this point, we have to win the series, right?
yeah,
To try to qualify. So
yeah.
it's either Sky. You still have Kishan in the squad. I obviously don't think he's going to play, but so it's probably Sky then. Same
Yeah,
side except Sky for Siraj.
I think Sky comes in. I think Bharat drops down. I think Bharat bats after Ashwin, Jadeja, and Akshar. He has to bat wherever he bats, right? And maybe this is controversial, and it depends on the pitch. I think you bring Sky in, and you bring him in for Siraj. And the reason I say that is because Umesh is a much more experienced bowler with the old ball. He'll be able to reverse swing it. Umesh can bat a little bit. And in these kind of like shootouts, basically, where it's like 145 plays, 160, those 3 6s that Umesh will whack
Yeah,
could make the difference, right?
makes a
And
huge difference. Yeah.
I actually think the curator isn't going to give you a green pitch. They're not even going to give you a batting track. It's going to be a spinning pitch. It's what India have rolled out. It won't be I don't think it'll be as bad as Indore, because I think Ahmedabad wants to keep its test cricket, and it has to keep its test cricket, right? So it can't roll out a terrible pitch. But it will roll out a spinning pitch, something more closer to a Delhi or a Nagpur. And to counter that, you need a Sky, I think, that can play spin pretty well. And yeah, I think that is the answer. You swap. Akshar hasn't got much of a ball in this series. He's been playing as a batting all rounder almost.
Yeah.
And so with Jadeja and Ashwin doing bulk of the work, and let's give Ashwin credit as well. In the first innings, he bowled beautifully. Second innings as well, there was a lot of stuff that was exploding till that ball got changed.
Yeah.
And maybe Indian fans will be like, "Oh, why did the ball get changed?" But the ball had split. The seam had split,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is an insane thing to happen to a cricket ball. And that shows you how abrasive that surface was. So I think we'll play 3 spinners. I don't think Kuldeep gets a look in. I think we'll drop a quick and we'll add a batter. And that batter to me shouldn't be KL. I think it should be Sky, because again, it's a case. It's like the Travis Head situation, right?
Yeah.
It's transferring
Play
pressure,
your
and
guy in
Rohit's
form.
big on that.
Yeah.
Rohit's big on that. He's big on transferring pressure, and those short passages can change a test match. So, um, yeah, I think we lengthened the batting lineup because runs are an absolute premium. You don't need five bowlers. That's the honest truth. We opening the bowling with two spinners, so you don't need two quicks to play. So let's call a spade, and let's move on.
Yeah. I mean,
I
well
don't know
said.
whether you disagree. I mean, I know maybe Ishan Kishan comes
I
in
so I
lefty.
don't bring in Kishan, right? Like I think Bharat has not earned his place in the team as a batter. He has as a keeper for the most part. I think he's been a better keeper of spin, and if they were preparing spinning surfaces, Kishan doesn't justify walking in. And then if you're picking in as a pure batter, then I pick Sky just for his ability to play spin. So it'll be really interesting. Prediction. Let me ask you if you had a chance to reset the prediction. Do you think we'll reset and come back, or do you think it's going to be messy? Because mathematically, we can still qualify for the World Test Championship final even with a loss, I believe. However, it relies on Sri Lanka winning at least one in New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they have to win 2-0, right, in New Zealand to make the
To win.
championship final. I think, which is a pretty unlikely result. But then if you told me 2-2 would be the result of the Border Gavaskar Trophy, I would have said that's a pretty unlikely result as well.
Also, very, very true.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm trying to pull what the.
In the meantime, no Kuldeep for you because he
Man,
batted. He got 40 runs.
he
Remember
can
in that
battle. I would
Bangladesh
play
test
Kuldeep. I would play Kuldeep. He's different.
instead
He
instead
gives
of
you
Sky.
instead of Siraj, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
no Sky for you.
So play four spinners. Yeah, play Umesh as your quick. I mean, it's a little bit extreme, but if Akshar is
Mm.
batting consistently at a 6 or 7 level, Jadeja obviously bats 5, 6, 7 level. Ash is a good 7 or 8. I think you can squeeze in Kuldeep and just bring something unique or different.
But you're not having trouble taking these wickets, are you? You're having trouble scoring runs. I think that's my view of it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's probably true. That's probably true. Okay,
It's a
let's
bit
look at
unfair on poor Kuldeep. We
the.
got some comments as well in saying Sri Lanka have to win 2-0.
Okay, so yes, if India win, we qualify for the World Cup final.
Mm.
If India draw or lose, then Sri Lanka needs to win both matches. Oh, okay, so we're still pretty comfortable.
Man,
Okay, all right. You think this
I
high
don't know
enough
what to
likelihood-
say.
you don't really think there's high enough likelihood that we lose and Sri Lanka beats New Zealand 2-0 at home.
See, I have tickets to this thing, so I have a
Yeah,
massive
you
vested
need.
interest in
Yeah,
making
that's fair.
sure that India get to the World Test Championship final at the Oval, 7 to 11 June.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair.
I mean,
Okay.
honestly, I think India will win. I think this type of setback is going to happen when you prepare pitches like this. You will have a bad day, and we had a very bad day on day one, and that's where this Test match was lost. And there was you had a mountain to climb. We tried, and then those two brilliant catches put paid to that fight back. But that this team has got enough character to bounce back from this, and they're not going to be fussed about that loss. To be honest, it will actually. It may have been complacency, a little bit of arrogance that will come back from any place. This is going to light a bit of a fire under their bumps, and that's not a bad thing. I think it's a good
I,
thing.
I couldn't agree more. I 100% think this should net be a good long-term outcome, disappointing as it happens. All right, DJ, we've gone over our time as we typically do when we're talking Indian men's cricket, Test cricket. Let's talk about the women's game really quick. It's been a while now, but when the the T20 World Cup wrapped up, before it happened, we all said every team is fighting for second place against Australia. It ended up being true. Australia ended up lifting the trophy once again. So
Quite
but
easily, actually.
but that semi-final wasn't quite that easy. India almost took it home. Let me just, without spending too much time reliving it, ask you about the Harman innings and the run out. Was that you play cricket, right? I'm just an armchair viewer. Was that lack of technique in for Harman to get back in, or was it just a freak chance where your bat got dug in? Like because her head was over the line, most of her body was over the line at the point of stuffing, but the bat was not, and so nothing was grounded. Thoughts?
It was unlucky. It's Harman isn't someone that lacks commitment to the cause. She was quite unwell.
Yeah.
She was. I don't think there's a lack of technique. I think sometimes that happens. And I mean, I think the Alisa Healy Alisa is a bit. I don't know. She maybe we'll have on the podcast one day, and she'll explain why she likes to stir things up so much. But she likes to stir things up, right? Like, and it's a personality thing. Like her uncle was on teaching the Australians how to sweep. I think that is one of the greatest pieces of cricket broadcasting ever. From with a trash can as the wicket in the back. I mean, wow. But those comments were A, I think they're pretty uncalled for. B, she she's playing the WPL, and I would have loved to say that she lost the first game, but she didn't. They came back from the dead to win that as well. She's captain of the UP Warriorz with a Z. But yeah, I mean, it was heartbreaking, and then the Dhoni comparison started coming out with that run out in that semi final, and that was even worse for a fan of both Harman and Dhoni to see these things replayed over and over again on social media. So it was a tough week. It was a tough week, and it was a
Yeah,
close game. But they lacked that, and Richa Ghosh should have come up a bit up the order,
yeah,
ifs and buts. But if you're Smriti and Jemmy didn't score runs, so it's going to happen. But I mean, kudos to Harman. She was sick and she scored runs, and
yeah.
Captain Courageous.
Yeah, I mean that's it.
Courageous. Captain
Core
Courageous.
ages. Did you just come up with that?
Yes, just came up with
Nice.
that. Clearly
There was one
excited.
point. I mean, I don't want to relive the World Cup much more. It was disappointing. I think we're getting some comments. Bowling intensity wasn't there. Too many runs to chase and dropped catches. And I 100% agree that there were dropped catches. But what I'm most excited about, DJ, which we'll wrap up the show with, is just a couple of weeks after seeing that crazy battle between Australia and India, and then Australia and South Africa in the semi-final, we had I turned on my TV and I see Harmanpreet Kaur batting with Amelia Kerr, and I was going to make a joke about Kaur and Kerr with something there.
Nice.
But
Nice.
then you had, of course, for the team we support, Meg Lanning batting with Shafali Verma, and
Man, what a partnership that was. 162.
then Grace
Awesome.
Harris and Kiran Navgire. Like, how great is
Wow.
it to see these women after being on opposite sides of a very, very hard fought battle? I mean, we've gotten used to it on the men's side. I don't transparently follow enough WBBL and the women's leagues across the world, but for the WPL, how great is it to see our
It's
rock stars batting together with
it's
the
so
overseas?
good. It's awesome. I mean, like watching Shafali and Meg just smash it everywhere, and then when Meg gets out, in works Jemmy and Cap, and
Yeah.
you're like, wow.
That top
And
four, and then
yeah,
Alice Capsey didn't really have to do anything. That top
yeah.
four
She's
really
playing as a
is
bowler today.
stacked. But let's talk quickly about 207 by the Mumbai Indians. Harman looked absolutely unbelievable. Yeah, and as even when she got out, Amelia Kerr.
I want to watch the Mumbai versus UP Warriors game. I'm sure they follow all of this
I mean, Jemmy, if you're
on social
watching, we would
media.
love to have you back anytime. She's been a blast to watch. She's been dancing on the boundary rope, did a couple
Yeah.
of different dance steps, and just
What is
having.
that dance called? The one that
I don't know, man. It's
it's
a
called a
floss or
particular dance.
something.
The floss.
I'm
Yeah,
too
yeah,
old
yeah.
for this thing. But
You're the cool. You're the
207.
youngest of us all, so
I
you're the
know that,
cool one.
but still old relative to the rest of them. 207 with Gujarat perishing for 64. So Gujarat has not had their best run. Then Delhi makes 223, and immediately, unfortunately, the RCB comparisons just start flying, right? Unfortunately. And Smriti made the mistake of basically saying something to the effect of, I would like to achieve for my franchise everything Virat achieved for the RCB men's franchise. And you're sitting there saying,
Zero
so,
trophies.
so nothing in the trophy cabinet. Of course, Virat has done a lot with the franchise,
Yeah.
but funny that there were no trophies. Let me quickly ask you about Taran Norris, or whatever, however you pronounce her name.
Your American compatriot.
American Associate Nation bowler, the only Associate Nation bowler to get picked up. Delhi Capitals not only has that rock star top four. I was expecting some, great bowling, obviously from Alice Capsey and Jess Jonathan and Marizan Cap and Shikha, who opened the
And
bowling,
good
like you said.
catching as well, by the way, by Shafali. Two
Yeah,
excellent catches.
But Tara Norris comes out and picks up a 5-4.
Yeah.
I mean, wins player of the match in a match where Shafali made 84 from 45 balls.
Yeah,
Awesome. Like, how critical was that?
It was awesome. There were 2 5-ers today, one on the winning side and one on the losing side. I think Garth got 5, right, in the second game for the Gujarat Giants.
Yeah, actually,
but I
shocking
mean,
that Kim Garth got 5-4 and the UP Warriors still pulled it off. I mean, Grace Harris was on a different planet.
Unbelievable, right? But it was just, I mean, the Delhi game, boss, I see this as being the team to beat. I see the Delhi Capitals winning their first trophy pretty soon. I mean, look at the lineup It's insane.
Yeah,
It's just
outstanding.
pure power. And I mean, the first game had some weird parallels to the first ever IPL game. Like I think the first ever IPL game, RCB lost by 140 runs, and here the
Yeah.
Gujarat Lion,
And KKR made
Gujarat
over
Lions.
200 again and
Yeah,
200 there too.
and here they lost by 143 runs. So a few parallels there. But I mean, it's a month to go to the IPL, but damn, this is not a warm up. This is a proper tournament, and you can see how much it means. There's some excellent cricket on show.
It
Already
just
two
means
200s.
it just means we get to live through 3 months of Premier League cricket in India across
Man,
both home
and
stadiums. It's
that
going to
Delhi
be great.
Capitals jersey, when you see it, you're like, and you can hear the Roar Macha song going in the back and stuff. It's too good.
Absolutely incredible.
Love it.
Absolutely incredible. Right. Well, if you are watching the WPL, we have an Edges and Sledges fan fantasy league going on. Unfortunately, as they tend to do, the official fantasy league was launched, I think, like 10 hours before
I
the
think you
first game.
sent the code while I was asleep. So
Yeah,
like,
and then
I
by the time
missed
you woke
that
up,
as
the
well.
game was on. But we have, I think, 20 people playing in the league for the Edges and Sledges fan league. So not quite as many as the men's game because we didn't have enough lead time. But if you'd like to play, check out our Twitter and Discord. We've got the league code posted there. That brings us to a wrap. DJ, it's a little bit less fun to relive the third test, but just great to live the start of the Delhi Capitals
Domination.
WPL campaign with you. It was
The
absolutely outstanding.
domination. Yeah, but I mean, we've talked about Ahmedabad. We've talked about the Gujarat Giants. So the only thing left to say is see you at the Garba, mate.
See you at the Garba, mate. Thank you all for listening. At One Tip One Hand on all the socials, and we will see you next time.